Emotional independent Stoicism teaches that the judgments of others are external events, neither good nor bad by themselves. Yet hatred feels personal, sharp, and undeserved. Many people experience it not because they are cruel or weak, but because they carry qualities that disturb the unexamined lives of others. This chapter explores the first reason people may hate you, a reason that has nothing to do with wrongdoing and everything to do with quiet strength. When you refuse to play the same emotional games as the crowd, you become a mirror. And mirrors are rarely loved by those who fear their own reflection. The first cause of hatred is emotional independence. Most people are unconsciously dependent on approval, validation, and shared outrage to feel stable. Their moods rise and fall with praise, attention, and agreement. When they encounter someone who does not react the same way, it unsettles them. You do not chase applause. You do not beg to be understood. You do not collapse when ignored. This self-containment feels like rejection to those who live on emotional borrowing. They interpret your calm as arrogance, your silence as judgment, and your boundaries as hostility, even when none of that is present. Stoic philosophy explains this reaction clearly. Epictetus reminds us that people are disturbed not by things, but by their opinions about things. When someone sees you unmoved by insults, gossip, or pressure, their opinion fills the gap. They assume you believe yourself superior. In truth, you may simply believe that insults are optional burdens. Your refusal to carry them exposes how heavily others are weighed down by their own reactions. That exposure breeds resentment, not admiration. Emotional independence also breaks unspoken social contracts. Many relationships are built on mutual venting, shared complaints, and collective insecurity. There is comfort in agreement about misery. When you step out of that pattern, you threaten the bond. You are no longer feeding the same emotional loop. Friends who once felt close may feel abandoned, even if you have not changed your care for them. You simply stopped reinforcing their habits of rumination. To them, it feels like betrayal. Another layer of this hatred comes from projection. People who feel powerless often project their frustration onto those who appear free. Your composure becomes the target. They tell themselves stories to explain why they lack what you seem to possess. Instead of confronting their own dependence on validation, they decide you are cold. Instead of examining their fear of standing alone, they accuse you of being distant. In this way, hatred becomes a defense mechanism. It protects them from the discomfort of self-examination. Stoicism does not advise you to correct these misunderstandings. Marcus Aurelius warns against wasting time arguing with opinions formed in ignorance. If someone is determined to misread your independence, explanation will not rescue you. In fact, explaining yourself often reinforces their narrative that you owe them emotional access. The Stoic response is steadiness. Continue acting with fairness and kindness, but do not surrender your inner autonomy to be liked. It is important to distinguish emotional independence from emotional numbness. Stoicism is not about suppressing feeling, but about choosing responses. You still feel compassion. You still experience joy and grief. The difference is that your emotions do not control your behavior, and they do not require constant external validation. To those who have never experienced this inner order, it looks unnatural. Anything unfamiliar is easily labeled as wrong. Hatred rooted in this cause often intensifies over time. The more consistently you remain calm, the more others feel challenged. They may test you with provocation, sarcasm, or exclusion. Each test is an attempt to pull you back into the shared emotional chaos. When you do not comply, their frustration grows. Recognizing this pattern helps you avoid internalizing their hostility. Their reaction is evidence of your boundary, not your failure. The Stoics teach that your task is not to be loved, but to be virtuous. If emotional independence allows you to act with reason, patience, and integrity, then it is worth the cost of misunderstanding. Seneca reminds us that the crowd admires glitter, not substance. Those who dislike your calm are often those who benefit from your agitation. When you stop providing it, they turn against you. Understanding this first reason reframes hatred as a signal rather than a verdict. It signals that you have stepped out of unconscious dependency. It signals that your inner life is no longer easily manipulated. This does not mean you should isolate yourself or grow bitter. It means you should accept that not everyone will be comfortable around someone who does not need what they need. In practicing Stoicism, you learn to let this hatred pass through without lodging in your character. You do not retaliate. You do not shrink. You simply continue. Over time, some will adjust and respect you quietly. Others will drift away. Both outcomes are acceptable. What matters is that you remain aligned with reason, not reaction. Emotional independence is not the absence of connection. It is the refusal to be owned. And that refusal, though harmless, is often enough to provoke hate. From a Stoic perspective, the measure of your progress is not comfort but clarity. When dislike appears without cause, examine your conduct, not their emotions. If you find no injustice in yourself, release the outcome. You are not required to manage the feelings of everyone you meet. By guarding your inner citadel, you model a different way of living. Some will learn from it silently. Others will resist loudly. Neither response changes your duty. As Marcus wrote, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Remain simple, consistent, and awake. Emotional independence, patiently practiced, becomes a quiet act of service. It shows that freedom is possible without cruelty, strength without domination, and peace without permission. Those who hate this truth are often those who need it most. Their anger fades when faced with time, while your discipline deepens through steady days. Unshakable self-respect. One of the most uncomfortable truths in Stoic thought is that many people do not hate you for what you do wrong, but for what you refuse to tolerate. The second reason people may hate you, though rarely admitted aloud, is unshakable self-respect. This form of self-respect is quiet, firm, and non-negotiable. It does not announce itself, yet it redraws invisible lines. And when lines appear where others expected open access, resentment is born. Most people are accustomed to subtle permission to interrupt, to belittle, to cross boundaries in small, deniable ways. Social life is full of these micro-violations, normalized through humor, hierarchy, or tradition. When you possess unshakable self-respect, you do not allow these intrusions to pass unchallenged. You may not confront aggressively. You may simply withdraw cooperation, change tone, or say no without apology. To the Stoic mind, this is natural. To the unexamined mind, it feels like rebellion. Epictetus teaches that dignity comes from knowing what is yours to control and what is not. Your time, your energy, and your values belong to you. When you treat them as non-negotiable, others feel denied something they assumed was available. They mistake access for entitlement. When entitlement is refused, it quickly turns into hostility. This is why self-respect is often punished socially, especially in environments where compliance is rewarded more than character. Unshakable self-respect also disrupts power dynamics. Many relationships, particularly unhealthy ones, are built on imbalance. One person gives more, tolerates more, and bends more. When you stop bending, the structure collapses. The other person experiences this collapse not as growth but as loss. They may accuse you of changing, becoming selfish, or losing humility. In truth, you have simply stopped sacrificing your inner order to preserve their comfort. Stoicism does not encourage confrontation for its own sake. Marcus Aurelius advises restraint, reminding us that we should act without hatred even when wronged. Unshakable self-respect is not loud defiance. It is calm consistency. You do not explain yourself endlessly. You do not justify boundaries to those who mock them. You hold your posture and let reality speak. This silence is often more threatening than argument. It removes the illusion that persuasion will restore control. Another reason self-respect provokes hatred is that it exposes hidden hierarchies. In many social spaces, value is assigned unconsciously. Some are expected to serve, others to command. When you act as though your time and dignity are equal to anyone else's, you disrupt these assumptions. People who rely on unspoken rank feel challenged, even if you never challenge them directly. Your behavior questions a system they benefit from, and systems resist questions. There is also a mirror effect. When someone sees you refusing disrespect, they are forced to confront the disrespect they accept in their own lives. This comparison is painful. It highlights compromises they have normalized. Rather than face that discomfort, they redirect it outward. They label you difficult. They call you proud. Hatred becomes a way to avoid introspection. Seneca observed that people hate those who remind them of their own weakness. Self-respect does exactly that. Importantly, unshakable self-respect is not cruelty. It does not require humiliation or dominance. It is compatible with kindness. You can be polite and still say no. You can be calm and still walk away. The Stoics believed virtue includes justice, and justice includes fairness to oneself. Allowing yourself to be treated poorly is not humility. It is neglect of duty to your own character. Hatred that arises from this cause often follows a predictable pattern. At first, others test your boundary lightly. A joke, a request, a demand framed as expectation. When you do not yield, they escalate. They may gossip, exclude, or provoke. Their goal is not understanding, but restoration of the old dynamic. Recognizing this pattern prevents confusion. You are not being punished for doing wrong. You are being pressured to return to a role that benefited others. Stoicism teaches endurance without bitterness. You are not required to correct every false narrative about you. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that time reveals the truth of character more clearly than defense. Those who observe quietly will see that your boundaries are consistent, not personal. Those who cannot accept that were never aligned with you in the first place. Living with unshakable self-respect also means accepting solitude at times. Not everyone will stay. Some connections depend entirely on your willingness to absorb disrespect. When those connections dissolve, it can feel like loss. The Stoics would call it subtraction of excess. What remains is lighter, more honest, and more stable. You gain fewer relationships but stronger ones. This reason for hatred is especially misunderstood because society often confuses self-respect with ego. Ego demands admiration. Self-respect demands alignment. Ego reacts emotionally. Self-respect responds deliberately. When people attack your character for maintaining boundaries, they reveal their confusion. They see only the loss of access, not the preservation of integrity. In Stoic practice, you are encouraged to review your actions nightly. Ask yourself whether you acted according to reason and virtue. If your self-respect protected your values without harming others, then their hatred is irrelevant. It belongs to them, not you. You are not obligated to be convenient. Unshakable self-respect is not a shield against pain, but it is a compass. It points you toward the kind of life that does not require constant self-betrayal. Those who hate this quality often sense correctly that it cannot be manipulated, and what cannot be manipulated cannot be controlled. For some, that loss of control is intolerable. From a Stoic lens, hatred born of self-respect is a tax paid for inner freedom. You do not seek it, but you do not flee from it either. You continue to act with fairness, clarity, and restraint. Over time, the noise fades. What remains is the quiet confidence of knowing that your worth is not negotiated daily. It is upheld through action. And that, though it angers some, steadies you. Stoicism reveals another reason people hate you despite innocent intentions. It is your refusal to perform false versions yourself daily. Authentic presence unsettles those surviving through masks, routines, and personas. When you speak plainly, you disrupt agreements built on pretense. Most people adapt identities to environments fearing rejection than emptiness. They learn to nod, agree, laugh, comply even when misaligned. This adaptation feels normal, invisible, and necessary for belonging there. Your authenticity removes that camouflage and exposes uncomfortable internal negotiations. Exposure breeds defensiveness, which mutates into dislike, contempt, or hatred. Stoics understood authenticity as alignment between thought, speech, and action. Marcus Aurelius warned against wearing masks for approval or safety. A mask may protect today but corrodes character across time. When you live without masks, you threaten systems on them. Workplaces, friendships, families often rely on unspoken role performances daily. One plays agreeable, one plays superior, another plays helpless roles. These performances maintain harmony but suppress truth and growth inside. When you refuse a role, the script collapses unexpectedly there. Others must confront reality without cues they depended upon before. This confrontation is frightening, so blame shifts toward you instead. They label you difficult, arrogant, cold, or socially unsafe person. None of these labels address the real disturbance you cause. The disturbance is freedom expressed without apology or performance masks. Seneca wrote that truth produces hatred before it produces respect. Authentic living accelerates this process dramatically in modern societies today. Social media, workplaces, and politics reward curated, agreeable identities constantly. When you refuse curation, you appear unpredictable and threatening socially. People prefer predictable masks over honest uncertainty daily in life. Your steadiness without pretense removes that false predictability from them. They cannot anticipate flattery, submission, or silent compliance anymore now. This uncertainty triggers anxiety, which transforms into resentment toward you. Stoicism advises accepting this reaction without bitterness or pride inside. You are not responsible for managing others' comfort with truth. Your responsibility is coherence between values, actions, and words consistently. Authenticity does not mean brutality, confession, or constant disclosure everywhere. It means refusing to lie about who you are inside. This quiet honesty destabilizes those invested in illusions around them. They may punish you through exclusion, ridicule, or rumors quietly. These tactics aim to restore conformity and shared pretending again. Stoic endurance means continuing without hardening your heart unnecessarily ever. You remain kind, but not false, open, but not porous. Over time, authenticity filters relationships with quiet precision slowly today. Those who valued your mask depart, disappointed or angry inside. Those who value truth remain, though fewer and deeper connections. Stoics preferred quality of character over quantity of approval always. Hatred is sometimes the price paid for honesty lived openly. This price is temporary, while integrity compounds quietly within you. Those who hate authenticity tire eventually when reactions fail consistently. Your task is patience, not persuasion, defense, or revenge ever. Marcus wrote that the soul becomes dyed by thoughts daily. Keep thoughts clean and actions aligned despite misunderstanding from others. Authentic living sharpens solitude but sweetens self-respect deeply inside. You trade shallow harmony for inner peace and clarity within. People who hate this trade reveal their own fear clearly. Fear of standing without costumes, scripts, or applause from crowds. Stoicism does not promise popularity. It promises freedom instead alone. Freedom lived openly attracts both respect and resentment simultaneously often. When resentment appears, examine yourself, then release judgment calmly afterward. If aligned, continue forward without shrinking or explaining yourself again. Authenticity needs no defense, it endures quietly through time alone. Hatred fades, integrity remains, and peace follows eventually within you. Thus, the third reason people hate you is authenticity itself. Not arrogance, not rebellion, but honest self-alignment without costumes. You remind them of lives' unlived truths avoided daily inside. This reminder hurts more than insults ever could deeply felt. Rather than change, they attack the messenger instead there often. Stoics accept this with calm resolve and steady minds intact. You continue authentic living as an act of service quietly. It shows another way exists beyond performance and fear alone. Some will hate you. Others will learn silently from watching. Both outcomes are acceptable within Stoic wisdom and reason always. You do not need permission to be real today ever. Reality grounded in virtue is enough for any life well. Hatred cannot touch the inner citadel unless invited inside willingly. Guard that citadel through truth, discipline, and reason alone steadily. Authenticity strengthens these walls day by day quietly within you. Those who hate will eventually move on elsewhere seeking masks. You remain standing, unchanged, aligned, and free within yourself always. This freedom is the Stoic reward earned through truth lived. Let hatred pass like weather across mountains unchanged by storms. Stand as the mountain authentic and unmoved by noise around. Thus concludes the third chapter of understanding hatred through Stoicism. Authenticity remains a lonely yet powerful path, chosen consciously always. Walk it calmly without apology or aggression toward anyone ever. The hatred you face is not personal, it is reflective. It reflects conflict within observers, not within you alone there. Keep your course steady and values intact despite pressure outside. Stoicism asks nothing more and promises nothing less than freedom. Endure, be honest, remain awake through days, nights, confusion alone. Authenticity lived is philosophy made flesh through action, daily practice. This embodiment unsettles but ultimately heals humanity over long time. Accept hatred as evidence of alignment, not error within yourself. Continue forward without bitterness, fear, or disguise ever again thereafter. Your life becomes simpler, clearer, and stronger through truth alone. Those ready will recognize and respect you quietly over time. Others will fade, carrying their resentment onward elsewhere again alone. Neither outcome should disturb your inner order or chosen path. Stoic peace depends on this unwavering stance through life entirely. Live authentic, live aligned, live free without masks forevermore. Hatred loses power when truth governs actions consistently inside you. Refusal to be controlled. The fourth reason people may hate you is one of the most subtle and powerful: your refusal to be controlled. Not dominated openly, not commanded directly, but controlled emotionally, psychologically, or socially. Control often hides behind concern, advice, tradition, or expectation. When you quietly opt out of this influence, people feel exposed. What follows is rarely dialogue. More often, it is resentment disguised as moral judgment. Most control is invisible because it is normalized. Families expect obedience in the name of loyalty. Friends expect agreement in the name of harmony. Institutions expect compliance in the name of success. These expectations are rarely stated clearly. They are enforced through guilt, approval, withdrawal, or ridicule. When you no longer respond predictably to these tools, the system fails. Those who relied on it feel threatened, not because you attacked them, but because you stopped responding. Stoicism teaches radical internal freedom. Epictetus states plainly that no one can control your mind without your consent. Yet many people live as if control is unavoidable. They organize their behavior around fear of disapproval or punishment. When they meet someone who does not, it disrupts their worldview. Your independence becomes evidence that their submission was never required. This realization is deeply uncomfortable. Rather than face it, they reject you. Refusing control does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it is simply declining to argue. Sometimes it is not reacting to provocation. Sometimes it is choosing a different path without announcing it. These small acts have large consequences. They remove leverage. People who once felt influential over you realize their influence is gone. They may escalate, becoming louder, more critical, or more emotional. This escalation is not strength. It is desperation. Marcus Aurelius warned that people will attempt to bind you with opinions. They will tell you what you should want, feel, or fear. When you do not accept these narratives, they accuse you of arrogance or rebellion. In truth, you are practicing discernment. You are deciding for yourself what deserves your attention. This decision threatens anyone who benefits from directing your focus. Another reason this refusal provokes hatred is that control often masquerades as care. Someone may believe they know what is best for you. When you choose differently, they feel invalidated. Their identity as a guide, protector, or authority figure is challenged. Instead of adjusting, they attack your character. They frame your independence as stubbornness, ingratitude, or disrespect. This framing allows them to maintain moral superiority while avoiding self-examination. Stoicism does not demand opposition. It demands clarity. You are not required to confront every attempt at control. Often the most effective response is quiet non-compliance. You listen, acknowledge, and then act according to reason. This restraint confuses those accustomed to emotional reactions. They cannot hook you with fear or praise. The absence of reaction deprives them of feedback. In that silence, hostility grows. Refusal to be controlled also exposes manipulation. Many social interactions rely on subtle pressure, compliments with conditions, help with strings attached, affection contingent on obedience. When you accept help without surrendering autonomy, or affection without submission, the manipulation fails. The other person feels used, though you have done nothing unjust. In reality, you have simply refused the unspoken contract. Hatred arising from this cause often comes with moral language. People will say you are selfish, irresponsible, or disloyal. These accusations are designed to restore control through shame. Stoicism teaches resistance to shame rooted in false standards. Shame is appropriate only when you violate virtue, not when you violate expectations. If your actions are just, measured, and intentional, then guilt has no rightful claim on you. There is also a collective dimension. Groups often maintain cohesion through shared fears and beliefs. When you step outside those beliefs, you weaken the group's psychological hold. Others may fear that your example will spread. They may isolate you to contain the threat. This isolation is framed as protection of values, but it is often protection of control. History shows that independent thinkers are rarely welcomed by tightly bound groups. Stoic endurance means accepting this isolation without resentment. Marcus Aurelius spent much of his life misunderstood, even as emperor. He reminded himself that doing the right thing does not require applause. Refusing control may cost you comfort, but it preserves sovereignty. That sovereignty is the foundation of Stoic peace. It is important to distinguish refusal to be controlled from defiance. Defiance seeks opposition. Refusal seeks autonomy. You do not need to prove anything. You simply live according to reason. This calm autonomy is more threatening than rebellion because it cannot be argued with. There is no conflict to resolve, no battle to win. There is only a boundary that remains. Over time, those who hate your independence may attempt reconciliation on their terms. They may offer approval if you return to old patterns. Stoicism advises caution. Change that requires surrender of autonomy is not reconciliation. It is regression. True harmony respects freedom on both sides. Anything less is merely control in a softer form. Living without being controlled sharpens your sense of responsibility. You can no longer blame others for your choices. This accountability is heavy but honest. Many people avoid it by surrendering autonomy. When they see you carrying it willingly, they feel exposed. Your example removes their excuse. That removal breeds anger. From a Stoic perspective, hatred born of your refusal to be controlled is not an enemy. It is confirmation. It confirms that your inner life is governed by reason, not pressure. You are no longer a predictable instrument in someone else's design. This does not make you superior. It makes you free. Freedom, however, is rarely celebrated by those who fear it. They will call it chaos. They will warn of consequences. Some warnings are sincere. Others are attempts to regain influence. Discernment is required. Stoicism trains this discernment through reflection and self-discipline. You examine motives, including your own, before acting. When you refuse control, you may feel loneliness. Control often comes packaged with attention. When it disappears, silence follows. The Stoics viewed this silence as fertile ground. It allows you to hear your own reason more clearly. In that clarity, hatred loses its power. It becomes background noise, not a directive. The fourth reason people hate you, then, is not rebellion or pride. It is your quiet insistence on self-governance. You do not ask permission to think. You do not outsource judgment. You listen, consider, and decide. This independence destabilizes those who rely on influence rather than virtue. Their hatred is a reaction to loss, not to harm. Silent growth and unspoken progress. One of the most overlooked reasons people may hate you is not something you do loudly, but something you do quietly. It is your silent growth, your unannounced progress, your refusal to narrate every struggle, every improvement, every inner victory. In a world addicted to signaling effort and broadcasting identity, growing without explanation unsettles those who measure worth through visibility. Stoicism understands this reaction deeply because it teaches that real progress is inward, subtle, and often invisible. Most people announce change before it happens. They speak of plans, intentions, and dreams long before action reshapes them. This announcement creates a shared psychological investment. Others begin to see themselves as part of the journey, offering opinions, expectations, and approval. When you grow silently, you bypass this social ritual. You improve without witnesses. When the results appear, people feel excluded. They were not invited into the process, and exclusion often transforms into resentment. Epictetus warned against advertising philosophical progress. He believed that virtue should show itself through action, not proclamation. When someone suddenly speaks with more clarity, reacts with more restraint, or walks away from what once trapped them, observers search for explanations. If none are offered, they invent their own. They may decide you think you are better than them. They may assume manipulation, luck, or arrogance. Rarely do they assume discipline, reflection, and patience because those qualities demand effort they may not wish to acknowledge. Silent growth disrupts comparison. Many people rely on relative positioning to feel secure. They are comfortable as long as progress feels evenly distributed. When you advance without warning, the comparison shifts abruptly. Someone who once felt ahead may now feel left behind. This gap produces discomfort. Rather than ask how you grew, they ask why you changed. The question is not curiosity, it is accusation. Stoicism teaches that growth is a duty to oneself, not a performance for others. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to become better without seeking recognition. When you live this way, you remove yourself from the economy of validation. This threatens those who depend on it. They feel as though the rules have changed without their consent. Hatred becomes a protest against that change. Another reason silent growth provokes hostility is that it exposes stagnation. When someone sees you calmer, more focused, or more disciplined, they are forced to confront areas where they remain stuck. This confrontation is painful. It challenges narratives they tell themselves about time, effort, and fairness. Instead of revising those narratives, they redirect the pain outward. They frame your growth as betrayal, as though improvement were a rejection of shared identity. There is also fear in this reaction. If you can change quietly, then change is possible without permission. This undermines excuses built on circumstance, background, or limitation. Your example becomes evidence that effort matters more than explanation. For those invested in helplessness, this evidence is threatening. Hatred becomes a way to discredit the example so it can be safely ignored. Stoicism does not recommend hiding growth out of shame. It recommends indifference to recognition. You do not conceal progress, you simply do not center it. You allow actions to speak without commentary. This restraint often confuses people accustomed to constant signaling. They may probe for explanations or attempt to provoke regression. These attempts are efforts to restore the familiar version of you, the one that fit comfortably into their expectations. Silent growth also alters dynamics of dependency. Some relationships rely on shared weakness. When one person grows, the balance shifts. The other may feel abandoned or judged, even if no judgment exists. Stoicism advises compassion without self-sabotage. You may offer support, but you do not shrink to preserve comfort. Shrinking is not kindness, it is dishonesty. Hatred born from this cause often arrives wrapped in nostalgia. People say you are not the same anymore. They say you have changed. This statement is rarely neutral. It carries loss and accusation. Yet change is the natural outcome of reflection and effort. To remain the same for the sake of others is to freeze oneself in time. Stoicism views this as a misuse of life. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes shaped by the thoughts it entertains. Silent growth is the visible result of disciplined inner thought. When others see the result without seeing the labor, they misinterpret it as distance or superiority. They do not see the nights of restraint, the moments of choosing reason over impulse, the repeated failures corrected quietly. They see only the difference, and difference is unsettling. The Stoic response to this hatred is patience. You do not correct every misunderstanding. You allow time to reveal consistency. Growth that is genuine stabilizes. It does not fluctuate to impress. Over time, some will recognize the steadiness and respect it quietly. Others will maintain their resentment. Both outcomes are outside your control. It is important to examine your own motives. Silent growth should not become silent contempt. Stoicism demands humility alongside progress. You do not look down on those who have not grown. You remember your own past clearly. This remembrance guards against pride and keeps growth aligned with virtue rather than ego. Living this way can feel lonely. Praise often accompanies visible struggle, not quiet mastery. When you stop narrating your pain, you receive less sympathy. When you stop announcing effort, you receive less encouragement. Stoicism prepares you for this trade. You exchange external reinforcement for internal stability. The exchange is uneven socially, but fair philosophically. The fifth reason people hate you, then, is not ambition or success, but quiet transformation. You changed without asking permission. You improved without inviting commentary. This independence unsettles those who rely on shared stagnation for comfort. Their hatred is not a verdict on your character. It is a reaction to their own inertia. Stoicism teaches acceptance without withdrawal. You remain present, kind, and just. You do not flaunt progress, but you do not hide it either. You live as evidence that change is possible without spectacle. This evidence is threatening to some, inspiring to others, and irrelevant to many. Your task is not to manage these reactions. Calm in a chaotic world. The sixth reason people may hate you is the one they understand the least. You're calm. Not indifference, not apathy, but a steady composure that does not rise and fall with the chaos around you. In a world driven by urgency, outrage, and emotional display, calm appears suspicious. People expect strong reactions as proof of sincerity. When you do not provide them, they question your humanity, your loyalty, or your morality. Stoicism explains this clearly. Calm is rare because it requires mastery, and what is rare is often resented. Most people live in a state of constant internal noise. They are pulled by news, opinions, social pressure, and unresolved emotion. Their nervous systems are trained to react quickly and intensely. When something happens, they look around to see how others respond, using shared emotion as a guide. When you remain calm, you break that feedback loop. Your presence introduces stillness into a system built on agitation. Stillness feels like a threat to those who rely on noise to feel alive. Stoic philosophy treats calm not as a personality trait, but as a practiced discipline. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind can shape itself into tranquility through reason. This tranquility is not weakness, it is control. When others panic, rage, or dramatize, and you do not, they feel exposed. Your calm suggests that their reaction may be optional. This suggestion is deeply uncomfortable. Rather than accept it, they reject you. Calm also removes leverage. Emotional reactions are easy to manipulate. Anger can be provoked. Fear can be exploited. Guilt can be induced. Calm resists all three. When you do not react as expected, people lose influence. They may escalate, becoming louder or more extreme, hoping to break your composure. When this fails, frustration turns into hostility. Hatred is often the final attempt to provoke a response. Another reason calm provokes hatred is that it disrupts group identity. Many groups bond through shared emotional intensity. Shared outrage creates belonging. Shared fear creates unity. When you remain calm in situations where others are emotionally synchronized, you appear out of step. They may accuse you of not caring even if you care deeply. What they really mean is that you are not performing care in the approved way. Stoicism distinguishes between concern and panic. You can care about outcomes without surrendering inner stability. You can act decisively without emotional chaos. This distinction is foreign to many. They equate volume with virtue and intensity with truth. Your calm challenges that equation. It suggests that clarity, not chaos, leads to effective action. This suggestion threatens identities built on emotional display. Calm also highlights maturity. Emotional volatility is often normalized and even celebrated. When someone remains steady, it draws attention to the immaturity of constant reaction. This comparison is rarely welcomed. People do not enjoy seeing their habits reflected as unnecessary. Instead of aspiring upward, they attempt to pull you down. Hatred becomes a leveling force, an attempt to make you as reactive as they are. Epictetus taught that when you encounter someone upset, you should remember that they are suffering from a mistaken judgment. Your calm is not a rebuke, but it is perceived as one. They assume you think you are wiser or better. In reality, you may simply have practiced restraint longer, but practice is invisible. Only the result is seen, and results invite comparison. Calm in adversity is especially provocative. When misfortune strikes and you do not collapse, people feel unsettled. They may interpret your composure as denial or arrogance. They expect grief, anger, or despair to be visible. When it is not, they assume something is wrong. Stoicism teaches acceptance of what cannot be controlled. Acceptance looks like calm. To those unfamiliar with it, acceptance looks like indifference. This misunderstanding fuels resentment. There is also envy hidden in this hatred. Calm is desirable. Many people want peace but do not know how to achieve it. When they see it embodied, they feel both attraction and frustration. The frustration comes from the gap between desire and discipline. Rather than bridge the gap, they attack the example. It is easier to dismiss calm as fake than to cultivate it. Stoic calm does not mean withdrawal from life. It means engagement without entanglement. You still act, speak, and choose. You simply do so without surrendering your inner balance. This balance makes you harder to categorize. You are not easily provoked, flattered, or intimidated. People who rely on these tactics feel powerless. Powerlessness often expresses itself as dislike. Hatred toward calm people often appears as moral accusation. You are told you should be angrier, louder, more reactive. These accusations are demands for conformity. Stoicism teaches resistance to such demands. You are not obligated to mirror the emotional state of others. Living calmly in a chaotic world can feel isolating. You may be excluded from emotional rituals that bond others. You may be misunderstood as distant. Stoicism prepares you for this solitude. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the universe is change and life is opinion. It is important to remain vigilant. Calm should not become coldness. Stoicism values empathy. You can acknowledge suffering without absorbing it. You can listen without reacting. The hatred directed at your calm often fades with time. Emotional storms exhaust themselves. Those who attack you may later seek your presence for stability. The sixth reason people hate you then is not that you lack feeling, but that you have learned to govern it.